Welcome to the Heart for God podcast. With many years of experience pastoring and helping to start churches, Dr. Jim Townsley has some practical and biblical advice that can be a great help to you and your ministry. On this podcast, Dr. Townsley and other guests with special expertise cover a variety of topics. His goal is to help you lead your church to be a healthy, strong, and balanced ministry, and for your family to be happy, healthy, and living for the Lord.
Welcome. Thanks for joining me today. It's good to have you listening online. And today's podcast, I want to talk about wisdom, but the real heart of what I want to talk about is a pastor faces a lot of really unique and often difficult decisions, and there are people that have problems that you never thought were possible, situations that you did not anticipate. Sometimes tongue-in-cheek will say, what they didn't teach me in Bible college. So in real life, there are things that, we deal with that were not anticipated, not expected, and we don't really know what to do or what to say. And so first thing I want to say is, when you face a difficult situation, a difficult decision, a problem, a potential church split even perhaps that could be caused by a problem, seek godly counsel. Talk to older men that you respect, people that have wisdom, people who've been through it. And very often, it'll give you much more insight about not only what to say and how to handle it, but how to be careful to not jump to conclusions, not hinder the work, not make it worse. And so there are things that happen. Some things should be kept private. Everything doesn't have to be announced from the pulpit. If somebody leaves the church, you don't have to announce from the pulpit, well, so-and-so left the church, because that's not necessary to bring that up from the pulpit. And there are people who have problems. They're immature. If you go back to the beginning of the church, you realize that very few people will stay with you for decades that are there at the very beginning. But they were helpful. That my friend who's with the Lord today, Earl Jessup, said that it's temporary structure. It's, they're there holding up the building initially, but ultimately they're not the main part of the building. So you have people that can be a blessing. They help you at the time. They help you while you're growing. But it's temporary. They won't be there forever. And you have to understand that. That's just the way it is. Sometimes because people are immature, sometimes because they're carnal, sometimes maybe you offended someone, didn't handle them right. There are different reasons why people only be there temporary. And for that matter, there are people moving more than ever. There's an attrition rate in every church. It's at least 15%. So there's a churning within a church. Job changes, people retire, move away, that people get discouraged, distraught. All those reasons compile together. But whenever you face something, false doctrine, let's say, maybe somebody, that it turns out that they have Calvinistic teaching or leaning, and they're teaching a class, and somebody comes to you and they say, hey, what's going on here? I don't think I agree with what this guy's saying. First of all, let me say you have to deal with it. Don't ignore it. If you ignore it, it never gets better. So if there is some kind of false teaching, something that potentially could cause division within the church, you need to go talk to them. And Matthew 18 tells you what you need to do. You go to that person, you ask them, what is it that you said? What do you believe? Where do you stand? And so you want to hear from them what they believe and talk it out. And sometimes people will be honest, and sometimes people really aren't honest. I know with people that tend to go in a direction of Calvinism, they don't come and talk to you. They won't allow their position to be challenged. They just kind of leave, or they do it subtly until there's a big problem, but they won't sit down where you could reason with them and talk to them. And so it's important to deal with it before it gets out of hand. Sometimes there are moral issues, and they need to be kept very private. If there's something going on, maybe a deacon has done something dishonorable, maybe the best thing to do is just ask him, or he should know that he should just step down. You don't have to announce this guy's immoral, so he had to cut him off. There's no reason to do that. It doesn't help anything. You're not hiding anything, but it's not really public information. And so there are things you have to be discreet about. And don't get in the pulpit and start browbeating people over issues like that. Stick to the Bible, stick to important things. And I know emotionally it's real easy to be so caught up in problems and issues that it just comes out. Be very, very cautious about what you say from the pulpit. And then there are not only moral issues, doctrinal issues, but sometimes people are just not really with you. Their standards aren't the same, their music's not the same, their dress standards not the same. They could come to church and it's not going to be a problem, but if they're a deacon, that becomes a problem because they're to be a leader in the church and represent what the church believes. So you may have to deal with that. And sometimes people change positions, but if they're vetted properly before they enter a leadership role, a staff or deacon or trustee, if they're vetted properly, that limits issues occurring like that. And sometimes people change over time, or people start reading something or following someone. So you have to be careful. So the pastor is a shepherd over the flock, and you have to guard against infiltration from wolves, from false teachers, from evil. And when you do get deacons, they should help you with that, make you aware. Someone is saying this, or someone believes this, or somebody has a problem. And it can be very, very subtle as it comes into the church. And when it really becomes a problem is when people want their position followed, and they start causing division because there are people that they like them, they become friends with them. And so, they can prepare people's hearts that, the pastor's against me, and they're already primed. So, that's where these problems occur. So you really have to be on guard against false teaching, people who are following the beat of their own drum. They're interested in being in control or getting their way. That's not how church should operate. Christ is the head of the church. The pastor is the under-shepherd. And people have to follow leaders, respect those in authority. And so we want to be careful not to lord over people, but at the same time, we have to lead people and teach them to be loyal and faithful. And if someone has a problem, every pastor should be open and say, sure, come and see me. Let's talk about it. Let's work on it. So the church should know where they stand in doctrine. They should know where they stand on worldliness and separation from the world. You should know where you stand on music. And the staff, the leaders, want to follow the leadership of the church, the pastor of the church. And when people are trying to understand what you want, what you think is right, it makes everything flow so much better. If you just leave everything into everybody's own hands and they do what they think is right, then that's where it causes division or problems and heartache and contentions. And that's when people they don't get along with one another. So it is a challenge for a pastor to try and keep everybody on the same page, encouraging one another, helping one another. That's a constant theme of a pastor, that let's love everybody, let's care for one another. When there's disagreement, let's disagree agreeably, and let's be kind to one another. If it's a major issue, a major problem, then you may have to deal with it. And it may even come down to church discipline. If there's someone unruly and they're not willing to repent and get things right, and you pray for them, you deal with them, maybe you take 2 or 3 others with you to talk to them, and they refuse to make things right, you may have to ask them to leave the church. Now, that's a last resort. That's not a first resort. And it's only done with the idea that we want them to be restored. We want to help them. And when it's a staff member, a deacon, there's someone really important and visible in the church, the potential to create a bigger problem, if it was just a member that was not that well known, or, there's less potential, although potential for a problem. But the more visible and the more authority a person has in the church, the greater the risk of there being a problem. And it's happened where sometimes pastors' own children maybe come back, work on staff, and become disloyal or get off on another direction. And that's tremendous potential to create problems and cause a church split and division and hurt feelings. And so we have to stay on our knees to ask God for help, for wisdom, and again, seeking help from godly men can be a lifesaver, can help tremendously. Be cautious. Don't deal with problems in anger. Don't be abrupt. Think it through. Pray about it. And no one has all the answers. Some people have more answers than others, but no one has all the answers. But God knows what's right. So deal with problems prayerfully, carefully. Seek Scripture. Make sure that it's followed. Give people an opportunity to give account of themselves and respond as to what they're doing or saying. And, no one wants to deal with problems, but no church is without them. I mean, that is the role of the pastor, to feed the flock, to protect the flock, and keep everybody following the Lord in the right spirit, working together. And when that happens, the psalmist said, how sweet, how wonderful, brethren, to dwell together in unity. And Jesus said that they all may be one. That's not an ecumenical statement. That it's talking about the unity within the church, and that is a sweet and a wonderful thing. And if you don't protect it, you'll lose it. Well, hopefully that gives you some things to think about, to chew on. May God help you to have wisdom and seek godly wisdom when these problems occur. And God will teach you. He will help you. You'll be a better pastor, a stronger pastor, as you go through those and find God's direction and God's help. Well, God bless you. Have a great day.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the podcast, consider sharing it with a friend. You can also follow at Dr. Townsley on Twitter or on Facebook at Jim Townsley.